Lloyd observed the girl's martial arts skills from a distance, thoroughly surprised by her expertise. Recognizing the technique she employed, he realized it was a form of breath control. Lloyd was already acquainted with this technique from his readings about a foreign concept known as Kai. This technique involved circulating one's breath inside the body, unlocking extraordinary power. Intrigued by the Kai technique, Lloyd marveled at the girl's display of mastery. As she stood there, confidently smiling, she conveyed an authority that suggested the orcs would need 100 years to match her prowess. The girl, noticing Lloyd who was hiding from afar, displayed an impressive ability to detect his presence even from that distance. Lloyd pondered whether to reveal himself, as he wanted to inquire about dungeons and the Kai technique she used. However, Grimoire opposed the idea, warning of the potential revelation of Lloyd's identity as the Seventh Prince. When Lloyd hesitated to emerge from hiding, the girl, deduced him to be a potential threat or enemy, took matters into her own hands. She leaped into the air, reaching the hill where Lloyd was concealed. As she approached, Lloyd frantically considered his options. Eventually, he transformed into a formal appearance, greeting her and introducing himself as Roberto, a new adventurer. While her face was turned away, the girl introduced herself as Tao, revealing her adventure rank as B. She was a martial artist. Lloyd felt confusion, wondering if she was suspicious of his altered form. Suddenly, she burst out in admiration, expressing her thrill at finding Lloyd's appearance very handsome. After 18 years of commitment to training, having finally left her dojo to become an adventurer, she was ecstatic to encounter someone as handsome as Lloyd. Tao revealed her desire to make him her boyfriend. However, Lloyd, with due respect, inquired and asked for her assistance in conquering a dungeon together. He inquired if she was busy, but in a sudden moment, she told him to leave it to her. Thus, became a member of Lloyd's party. They ventured into the B-ranked difficulty dungeon. Inside, Tao stood before the monsters and effortlessly wiped out the entire horde with a single blow, intending to impress Lloyd and make him fall in love. However, Lloyd's attention was captivated by the dungeon crystals scattered around, and he did not seem to notice her display. Frustrated, Tao sought acknowledgement, but Lloyd reassured her that he saw her and praised her for being amazing. He then inquired if she was a solo adventurer, and she confirmed it, mentioning that she had not found any male adventurer friends, prompting her to embark on solo adventures. During a break in the dungeon, as they sat down to eat, Lloyd asked about the Kai attack. Tao, surprised that someone from the continent was familiar with the technique, inquired about Lloyd's understanding of it. Lloyd shared his insights, likening the Kai technique to magic power in sorcery, emphasizing the significance of breath control. Impressed, Tao elaborated on the technique, explaining that Kai training involved circulating breath to unleash a mysterious power. It required extensive training to feel the Kai within the body. Playfully, she teased Lloyd to utilize her presence for easier breathing training. Lloyd sat there, relaxed, and started the breath training for Kai. As he tried, his lungs felt overwhelming pressure, causing sharp pain. Tao looked at him concerned and inquired if he was trying to use Kai. She revealed that he was attempting to imitate what he saw when she was fighting. She immediately scolded him for trying to use Kai. She warned him against doing so without proper training, as it could result in intense burning in his lungs. Despite the warning, Lloyd tried again to use Kai. This time, he was certain that he felt something within his body, some type of energy different from magic. Determined to harness this power and combine it with magic, he expressed his resolve. Tao, curious, decided to teach him more about Kai and thanked him for accepting the offer. She told him not to let his breath stop before they left the dungeon, and he agreed. Meanwhile, at the castle, the clone of Lloyd that Grimoire possessed was having tea. Grimoire contemplated the life of Lloyd, acknowledging his immense power and relaxed lifestyle. However, he found it puzzling that Lloyd was not interested in anything other than magic, consistently exploring magical realms. Suddenly, Sylpha appeared in the scene. Her appearance shocked Grimoire as he saw her standing there. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Tao had demonstrated her Kai ability, successfully defeating the dungeon's boss, the Grey Wolf. The treasure chest lay in front of them, waiting to be claimed. Tao pointed out the uniqueness of the treasure box, emphasizing its immaturity. Lloyd, shocked by this revelation, learned that treasure boxes mature over time, finding the concept intriguing. He closely examined the treasure chest from the outside, while Tao acknowledged his interest in the external aspects rather than the contents within. As Lloyd immersed himself in inspecting the treasure box, Tao recognized his abilities, noting how quickly he mastered Kai breathing. Filled with joy, she expressed her happiness at having found a suitable companion and eagerly anticipated starting a relationship with Lloyd. In a decisive moment, Tao decided to open the chest, confident that there was nothing significant inside. However, to her surprise, a blade suddenly emerged from the chest, striking the ground with enough force to create a crack. Tao was shocked by the unexpected attack from the supposedly harmless box. The treasure chest began to rumble, and a creature materialized from within, a skeletal being with a tail, levitating in the air. Both of them were shocked to witness the creature levitating above them. Tao recognized it as a lick, while Lloyd speculated if it was the actual boss they were expecting. Tao clenched her fist, contemplating the monster, revealing that liches are formidable but not overwhelmingly powerful. She urged Lloyd to wait outside, but he insisted on staying to witness her confrontation with the creature. Despite his insistence, Tao disregarded his request and forcefully pushed him out of the dungeon, a shove so powerful it could potentially have caused broken bones. With Lloyd expelled from the dungeon, Tao faced the lick, which immediately launched a barrage of attacks. Tao skillfully dodged the assaults while airborne. The next attack almost connected, but she countered with a powerful kick that redirected the force toward the ground. Tao was surprised to encounter such a potent monster in a low-level dungeon. Even an A-class adventurer would struggle against it. Despite the difficulty, she aimed to stall the monster until Lloyd safely exited the dungeon. As Lloyd soared away from the dungeon due to Tao's forceful push, he contemplated the Kai technique and expressed a keen desire to learn more about it. Taking precautionary measures, he trapped himself inside a defensive barrier to avoid collateral damage. Meanwhile, the monsters within the dungeon were also drawn against the barrier walls and the ground. Wondering about Tao's reasons for forcefully ejecting him from the dungeon, Lloyd sought to communicate with Grimoire. However, Grimoire remained unresponsive, prompting Lloyd to shake him gently. To his dismay, he discovered Grimoire half unconscious, seemingly pleading to be rescued. Meanwhile, within the dungeon, Tao faced the lick with all her might, realizing that she was overwhelmed and on the verge of losing her life. With Lloyd already outside, she decided to make her way out as well. The lick, however, began speaking about Kai, catching Tao off guard. It proceeded to share memories of the Kai technique from another country and revealed that it had devoured someone who once practiced the technique. The lick scorned the Kai technique as an inferior substitute for magic, leaving Tao shocked and angered by the disparaging comments. The lick continued, deemed Tao unworthy of being consumed based on lick's past experiences of devouring souls of someone with same abilities and the knowledge it had acquired. The lick expressed its desire to devour Lloyd, citing his reaction to the first attack as the reason. Tao engaged in conversation with the lick, highlighting the differences between Lloyd and the lick itself. She explained that while both were eager to learn, Lloyd possessed a unique quality finding meaning even in a single pebble. Tao took pride in this distinction, as the Kai technique was often dismissed as a martial art for novices, yet Lloyd still found it fascinating. Disregarding Tao's words, the lick activated a barrier, rendering her attacks ineffective. Undeterred, Tao relentlessly attacked the lick, ignoring the defensive barrier. She had been training her Kai diligently since the age of 5, irrespective of weather conditions or relationship status. The lick, unfazed, dismissed her efforts. In her fury, Tao blew away the defensive barrier and stood in a stance, warning the lick not to underestimate her. However, the exhaustion and stress took a toll, causing her to collapse due to the overuse of Kai. The lick, calling her pathetic, approached and gathered magic on its fingertip. It revealed that Tao had managed to pierce its barrier with her point-blank Kai technique, but the magic it possessed surpassed hers. The lick criticized her for dedicating her life to a skill that ultimately proved futile. As the lick prepared a formidable attack called Death Fang, Lloyd unexpectedly appeared, surrounded by a barrier, and intervened to save Tao. Observing Tao on the ground, he inquired if she had given up, declaring his intention to take down the lick and urging it to start the showdown. As Tao rose from the ground, she was astonished by the protective barrier surrounding her. Lloyd's unexpected return caught her off guard, and his fierce gaze locked onto the lick. In a split moment, before either the lick or Tao could comprehend it, Lloyd chanted Magic Dash and instantly appeared behind the lick. Both Tao and the lick were shocked by Lloyd's sudden movement, leaving the lick in wonder as it had not even witnessed Lloyd chanting the spell. The lick retaliated by bombarding Lloyd with attacks, but he remained safely inside his defensive barrier. Tao stood there, observing Lloyd in action as he utilized a combination of breathing, melding Kai and magic together, creating a complex strategy. Recalling Tao's advice to focus, Lloyd concentrated on his breathing, taking in air deeply. In a surprising move, he dissolved his own defensive barrier, acknowledging the limits it imposed. Tao realized that Lloyd dissolved the barrier not because of the lick's attacks, but to absorb more air and strengthen his breath. Lloyd began weaving magic and Kai together, bearing the heavy load in his lungs. Successfully fusing the ultimate power of Kai and magic, he relentlessly bombarded the lick with attacks. The speed of his assault was so rapid that it seemed as if he did not need chance, a fact that the lick found ridiculous. Lloyd enhanced the precision of his attacks, making them thinner and sharper. His final powerful strike pierced through both the magic barrier and the lick, splitting them in two. The lick dispersed in the air, leaving Tao gazing at Lloyd in admiration. Finally achieving his goal, Lloyd basked in a sense of happiness and accomplishment. After the intense fight, they opened the chest only to find an ordinary blade inside. Tao felt disappointed, thinking they had gone through all that trouble for just a knife. However, Lloyd reassured her, suggesting that the dagger seemed to be imbued with some magic. Tao dismissed the idea of the imbued magic being anything special. Suddenly, the treasure chest began to sink into the ground, leaving Lloyd shocked. Tao explained that when the treasure is taken, the dungeon disappears, akin to a lizard cutting off its own tail. She clarified that the treasure chest was the real core of what people call a dungeon. It resides in the ground, absorbing magic items to grow into a dungeon. The chest then absorbs the equipment of adventurers who attempt to conquer it. As it nears conquest, the treasure chest offers up all the items it has absorbed until that point and makes its escape. Lloyd found this fascinating, referring to it as a perfect cycle. He was happy to realize that the treasure chest was the essence of what people considered a dungeon. As the chest sank deep, Lloyd acknowledged that it hides in the ground until it can regrow its power. Tao affirmed it, praising him as an amazing sorcerer. Curious about why he used Kai instead of magic, she wondered if it was for her sake, especially after the Lick made fun of her. However, to her frustration, Lloyd revealed that he used Kai simply because he found it interesting. His response left her uneasy. In a sudden turn, Lloyd remembered something and immediately started levitating. He took the dagger and informed Tao that he was heading home quickly. As he departed, Tao, standing on the ground, looked at him with admiration, especially after witnessing his secret move, Kikuga. Even she cannot use it. She felt even more determined and motivated to train harder, aspiring to become an interesting woman for Lloyd. He affirmed her feelings and launched off towards his home. Tao walked away with admiration for Lloyd, but realized they had not figured out how to contact each other. Meanwhile, Lloyd went directly to the castle and found his replica doll beaten up on the ground in his room. Silpha was in tears, holding a sword, having dueled with Lloyd's replica possessed by Grimoire. She expressed her frustration at the replica becoming weak in the sword fight. Grimoire, lying on the ground, complained to Lloyd for being late, resulting in a severe beating from Silpha. Grimoire examined the knife and found it to be shoddy, complaining about Lloyd being late for such a seemingly insignificant item. Lloyd apologized but emphasized that the knife might hold proper treasure. He put the knife into hot water and scratched its surface. As expected, a magic chant emanated from it, revealing that the knife was coated with magic marrow. The liquid marrow served as the medium for applying magical enchantments to weapons. Anyone could use it to strengthen their weapons. For example, this knife had an enchantment upon it. Further inspection revealed it to be the increased strength chant. Lloyd poured the enchanted liquid into the glass container and shook it until the spell was destroyed. He acquired the magic marrow liquid from the knife, noting that magic marrow was expensive and enchantment magic itself was quite challenging. If the enchantment failed, both the liquid and the weapon would be lost. Determined to analyze the marrow and produce it himself, Lloyd applied water magic to purify it. The spell, initially only powerful enough to purify muddy water, could break down substances into their ingredients with continued purification. Lloyd discovered that the ingredients were silver oil and red magic flour. Red magic flour was rare, made by pulverizing the core of a monster. Lloyd decided to create the flour using the treasure chest from the dungeon, excited about acquiring oil, silver, and numerous weapons for enchantment. Lloyd went to his father and acquired a bag of silver coins. His father emphasized whether he was sure he did not want gold coins, but Lloyd insisted on silver. Pleased with Lloyd's modesty, his father wondered what he would use his allowance for. Lloyd obtained his first ingredient, silver, and then headed to acquire the next. During swordsmanship practice with Silpha, he won the battle after an intense struggle. As promised, Silpha helped him acquire the oil. She expressed relief at seeing him strong again, considering he had been weak the day before. Meanwhile, Grimoire, frustrated, wondered why the strongest mage like Lloyd could not defeat a maid, viewing Silpha as a formidable opponent. After acquiring the oil, Lloyd thanked Silpha, who admired him and wished him success in preparing the dish. With oil, silver, and red magic flour in hand, Lloyd finally created the magic marrow and fulfilled his one goal. Next, Lloyd approached his brother and demanded a bunch of weapons to test his magical enchantment skills. Amused by Lloyd's request, his brother revealed that he had been anticipating what kind of request Lloyd would make, emphasizing Lloyd's love for magic. Knowing that his brother had an abundance of elite bodyguards, it was clear he would also possess a vast array of weaponry. His brother asked the knights if anyone wanted their weapons enchanted, and suddenly every knight tossed their weapons for Lloyd to use as he saw fit. However, in reality, the knights were quite skeptical and hesitant since they had to give away their brand new equipment. They were aware that magic enchantments were a high-level skill and often failed. Moreover, entrusting a 10-year-old child with this task added to their lack of confidence in Lloyd's abilities. Nevertheless, they were bound to follow the order from his brother Alberto. After acquiring the weapons, Grimoire was fired up to enchant them and make them the strongest ever seen. With everything in place and even his clone assisting, he began the intense process. With an excited and focused demeanor, Grimoire meticulously wrote enchantments on the weapons. However, to his dismay, the sword broke as he attempted to infuse multiple strengthening enchantments and various others into the limited space. Despite his rigorous efforts, the steel of the sword could not withstand all of Grimoire's enchantments, resulting in a few unsuccessful attempts. After several tries, he managed to successfully enchant 50 swords out of the 120. Lloyd's brother Alberto was surprised to hear the feat Lloyd had achieved. Lloyd apologized for the failure of the remaining 70 swords, but in reality, about 80% of them were a success. A few experiments with particularly ambitious spells caused some of the swords to fail. Alberto was impressed by Lloyd's accomplishment, acknowledging that even high-level enchanters typically have only about a 10% success rate. Lloyd's talent surpassed Alberto's expectations, and he realized that Lloyd was far more skilled than he had initially thought. However, the knights remained skeptical, assuming that Lloyd had merely messed up 70 swords and got scared. In the end, no one doubted his abilities, and they could praise the swords randomly without reason. However, when one of the knights put his sword into his scabbard, the scabbard fell into 2 pieces, the sword he had put in cut through the scabbard. Confused by this unexpected outcome, the knights realized the true potential of the swords. They became happy, and Lloyd expressed his desire to see them using their swords in actual battle. The knights agreed, and Lloyd offered to join them in hunting. As his father had requested, Lloyd, his maid Silpha, and the knights ventured into the forest, heading towards the part where magical beasts were sighted, near the lake ahead of them. Silpha noticed Lloyd's excitement at seeing the knights in action. Lloyd affirmed it, expressing that leaving the mansion like this was a rare event for him. He eagerly anticipated seeing his enchanted weapons and encountering magical beasts. Silpha gazed at Lloyd's happy face, catching the attention of Lloyd's brother, Alberto. Silpha thanked Alberto for letting her join them. Alberto acknowledged her role as a bodyguard and instructor. Alberto inquired if she was interested in Lloyd romantically, but she modestly replied that she was merely his instructor. Alberto playfully teased her, causing her to pick up her sword. However, he calmed her down, assuring her that he was just kidding. In a sudden moment, Silpha felt the presence of monsters. The monsters ambushed them, revealed to be kobolds wielding iron weapons. Alberto deemed it an uncalled-for attack, but the knights considered it a warm-up before facing magical beasts, showing determination to protect Prince Alberto. Lloyd was already aware of the impending attack, having used one of the basic Kai techniques taught by Tao presence detection. With this form of breathing, he was constantly aware of the exact position of everything around him, finding Kai to be quite useful. Grimoire observed Lloyd's growing strength, noting his constant protection and detection. The showdown between the knights and monsters began, and Lloyd's interest peaked. The knights effortlessly slashed the monsters into 2 pieces, surprising themselves with the power of enchantments. Their swords cut through steel armors without effort. Lloyd was amused to see the success of his enchantments, and the swords performed so well that some soldiers acted like children holding a kitchen knife for the first time in their lives. Alberto seemed quite joyful as the knights headed toward their sweet victory, thanks to Lloyd's ingenious enchantments. He appreciated and praised Lloyd for the great work he had put in. Silpha also appreciated Lloyd's efforts as she stood above the dead horde of monsters she had killed. Lloyd felt uneasy as he looked at her, realizing he had not enchanted Silpha's sword. A monster ferociously approached, and as Lloyd prepared to tackle it, Tao barged in and kicked the monster away with her strong kick. Tao and Lloyd exchanged glances as she effortlessly blew away all the monsters with her Kai technique seated above her horse. She revealed that she had sensed the presence of monsters and came flying, introducing herself as the adventurer Tao. Lloyd was quite tense to see her, realizing he was about to call her out as Alberto, potentially revealing his true identity. He never thought he would meet her in a place like this. Tao noticed Lloyd and approached him, examining him closely. She shared her doubts with Lloyd, stating that she had sensed him using Kai breathing. Convinced that Lloyd was Roberto due to the similar technique and a somewhat similar face, she questioned him about his identity. As Tao pondered the identity, Silpha slashed out a monster that had been standing behind her. Silpha thanked Tao for the help and further advised her not to make the knights work harder. With an intense gaze, Silpha warned Tao not to talk to Lloyd frivolously. Tao responded with an equally intense tone, escalating the situation. Alberto intervened to break the tension. He thanked Tao for her help and insisted that they fight the monsters as a group for the time being. After a while, they finally reached their destination at the lake. Alberto thanked Tao for her help and introduced himself as the second prince of Salem. The revelation shocked Tao, as she did not know she was talking to a prince. She immediately apologized for her rudeness and found Alberto to be quite attractive and hot. Still curious about the Alberto she knew, as he resembled Lloyd, Tao also found Lloyd's brother's presence to be quite familiar. She asked about Lloyd's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Lloyd successfully disappeared from the scene away from Tao. He was quite tense, thinking that his presence detection technique worked against him, and also acknowledged Tao's presence sensing ability to be much more precise. He decided to wait inside the tent until the magic beasts arrived. As he entered the tent, he saw Silpha naked and got hit by her heavy chest. Lloyd inquired about the reason for her presence there. She clarified that she had been changing her clothes since the clothes she wore were covered in blood. Lloyd still questioned why she was in his tent, and she revealed that they both would be sleeping in the tent together tonight. This revelation made him creeped out. Silpha speculated that all guards outside were only protecting their sworn Alberto, and besides, she was the only one here with the ability to protect Lloyd. However, Lloyd insisted on sleeping alone. Silpha clinched him under his thighs and warned him about the dangerous predator outside that is even more dangerous than magic beasts. Tao came running towards Lloyd's tent as she sensed the presence of Roberto in there. She was shocked to see Silpha sitting above his face and felt quite uncomfortable and uneasy looking at her doing perverted things. Silpha stood up and called her an idiot, which angered Tao due to her condescending tone. The argument started between the ladies. Meanwhile, Lloyd felt more uneasy and cramped. At the same time, his brother Alberto also felt the need not to leave Lloyd alone by himself, and acknowledged that Silpha had changed quite a lot after being assigned as the guard. Alberto further noticed romantic feelings toward Lloyd from Silpha. Meanwhile, Silpha and Tao had an argument. Silpha inquired about Tao's presence, and she replied that she had been assigned to a task. Lloyd and Alberto, noticing the conflict unfolding between the two, deemed relationships with women to be a scary thing. Tao revealed to Silpha that she had accepted the request to repair a shrine on that hill. Lloyd overheard something about the shrine, intriguing him. Silpha insisted Tao go there, frustrating her. As she was about to head there, Lloyd intervened and warned her against going alone. He insisted she take someone who can sense presence for reassurance. Lloyd further emphasized that they would wait until dawn for magic beasts and insisted she stay here. Tao wondered and dismissed the idea of waiting for a lookout because the magical beasts had already appeared on the scene, standing in front of them. He crushed the horse beneath his feet, piquing Lloyd's interest. A bear-wolf magical beast appeared in their place of stay, and the knights started to gather around after noticing the threat. The knights marched toward the beast, but it startled them with its long-necked move. The knights decided to keep their distance and wait for an opening. Silpha told Lloyd to get behind her. Lloyd was amazed to see the bear-wolf's fast movement, and Grimoire had his gaze locked on the other side. Lloyd noticed it was the shrine and realized something. Tao appeared on the scene to land a direct attack upon the magical beast, but it easily dodged her. Alberto was also prepared to face the magical beast. He stood in a stance and chanted a spell, Ardent Fireball, that burned the magical beast to a crisp. Tao was shocked to see Alberto in action, and Lloyd found it amusing. As the knights saw the magical beast fall, a wave of happiness engulfed them, and they burst into cheers for their Prince Alberto, claiming victory using one of the strongest spells. Alberto modestly passed all the credit to his brother Lloyd, stating it was only possible because he had enchanted his sword, thanks to Lloyd. Lloyd was also quite amused by the fact that his enchantments were successful because he was nervous before, as the sword he enchanted looked really expensive. The knights and Alberto also praised Lloyd. Silpha inquired to Lloyd about the shrine that was used to seal the Magin. In a sudden moment, they sensed something when they turned around. The magical beast Alberto blasted had been revived, and there were more ferocious magical beasts standing by its sides. The presence of even more monsters shocked all of them. They were shocked to see the defeated magical beasts stand up. To complicate matters, there were even more magical beasts there. One of the magical beasts spoke in a condescending tone and called the humans pathetic for hurting his underlings. They were shocked to see the magical beast talk. A head emerged out of the magical beast's mouth, introducing himself as the Majin Pazuzu. He showed his resolve to take revenge against everyone and expressed his desire to take everyone's lives. Tao felt uncomfortable as she looked at the Majin in the mouth. The brawl between the magical beasts and the knights started. Alberto slashed out the monster's face, including its eyes, in the strike. To his surprise, the monster reversed the wound inflicted on it and perfectly healed, as if it was never wounded. Tao entered the scene and kicked the monster to save Alberto from the beast. Tao was frustrated to realize that the beasts were regenerating immediately. Alberto also sensed something different about the magical beasts, noticing some hybrid ones mixed in as well, and they were being controlled by the lower Majin. Lloyd was intrigued to see the Pazuzu Majin, as he had broken his seal in that shrine and got out. He inquired with Grimoire if he knew the Pazuzu Majin since they were both Majin. Grimoire realized that the Pazuzu Majin was using magical nature change magic to control those magical beasts. He further emphasized that, in order to make the magical beasts think of him as their parent, he had changed the nature of his magic by altering the smell or color of his magic according to the beast's taste. The magic Pazuzu poured acted like puppeteer strings, which also served as a conduit for recharging magic in the magical beasts. Grimoire emphasized the need to defeat Pazuzu, stating that if they did not defeat him, the conflict would never end. In that moment, Lloyd pleaded with Grimoire to teach him to use magical nature change magic. Grimoire showed reluctance, considered it a bad idea due to the ongoing life and death situation. However, Lloyd insisted on learning, and Silpha, the maid, stood before Lloyd to protect him while Tao suffered an attack and pleaded for Silpha's help. Pazuzu Majin came forward, shouting towards them. Alberto and the knights struggled in the fight. Pazuzu noticed that a few of them seemed fairly skilled while the rest were just small fry relying on their weapons. Seeing Silpha guarding Lloyd, Pazuzu wondered about their relationship, assuming she might be hiding Lloyd behind her out of fear. He insulted Silpha, calling her a trash babysitter. Tao looked at Silpha standing there, and in that moment, Silpha decided to enter the battlefield. As Silpha walked toward Pazuzu, Alberto insisted she stay close to Lloyd. Pazuzu, overly confident in his abilities, began trash-talking when he saw Silpha approaching. He insulted her and expressed his desire to defeat Silpha. In response, Silpha, with the same condescending tone, engaged in trash talk. She referred to Pazuzu as a coward sitting inside a ragged bag, insulted his smell, and claimed it interfered with Lloyd's breathing. Silpha then declared her resolve to kill him, and the Majin challenged her to do so if she could. Majin Pazuzu stood before Silpha whole and emphasized his infinite regeneration ability. He highlighted that as long as he continued feeding his underlings, they too would regenerate endlessly. Silpha stood silently. Majin revealed that he would never run out of magic because he possessed infinite energy. As the Majin spoke, she could not help but put her hand on her face in exasperation. However, he insisted that she not regret her fate, assuring her inevitable death. In response, Silpha bluntly remarked on the Majin's foul breath and told him to stop talking. Enraged by her comment, Pazuzu Majin opened his jaws and devoured her entirely, shocking Alberto, who witnessed the scene. However, in an instant, Silpha severed the Majin into pieces, scattering them around, and dismissed him as no big deal. She sarcastically told him to get out of his fursuit, but the Majin regenerated once again. Alberto and Tao noticed a change in the movements of the other magical beasts, which became more sluggish. Additionally, their regeneration seemed slower than before. Alberto understood the situation. The reason behind the sluggish performance of the magical beasts was that Majin Pazuzu was focusing his magic on regenerating the bear wolf he resided within. Acknowledging this vulnerability, Alberto ordered Silpha to inflict as much damage as possible until they could regroup. Silpha acknowledged Alberto's order, while the Majin arrogantly labeled them as fools. The next part will be posted tomorrow. Until then, please consider liking and subscribing.